I promise you, it'll make for a more relaxing interview. On the count of four, everybody just let it all out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah! Feel better? I needed that more than any of you.
Mr. Bill Summers, you are the most famed percussionist in the world, and it is indeed an honor to have you here at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy.
Thank you.
We're going to have a short interview that will be filmed, and please, I want you to speak as freely as possible, which I know you will do. So, Mr. Summers, the first question is,
Thank you.
music and cultural diplomacy will be introduced by Mark. The second question will be introduced by myself. And the third and fourth questions will be introduced by the two MA students that we have here at the ICD.
Mr. Summers, let me take this opportunity also on my behalf to welcome you to the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy. It's an honor to meet you. I've heard so much about you, namely from your brother after many years.
Nice.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I want to ask you a question very close to my own heart. I wrote my thesis actually when I was studying in Paris on the diplomacy of jazz, looking at actually the power that music has to serve as a vehicle for cultural diplomacy. Some would argue today that hip-hop is the new jazz, in the sense that sort of hip-hop is really reaching the world in ways that many other musical forms have not. Some also think it can be a great mechanism for cultural diplomacy. For example, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton actually is paying to send hip-hop artists around the world. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think of this? In the sense, is hip-hop a representation of America abroad? Is it a good representation? For example, the music of jazz obviously had very different messages, many of the lyrics, than many of the messages in a lot of pop hip-hop today. So first of all, how do you compare? And is hip-hop, in your sense, let's say, a good representation of the USA? And secondly, is this something that the government should be involved with? In the sense, how do you feel that, let's say, a government is paying, and in this way sort of using this music for other purposes? Does that somehow taint maybe the authenticity of the music? So in terms of music as cultural diplomacy today.
That's my answer. So, some people like hip-hop, some people don't. Some people like jazz, some people don't. Some people like R&B, some people don't. Most people, and most of the young people all around the world, love hip-hop. And I think that, I'll give you a little history. There probably, I don't know, there's several jazz musicians in the room. If I asked any one of them where the word came from and what does it mean and how it developed, I would say 90% of them couldn't answer the question. Okay, so in the beginning of jazz, it had the same reputation as hip-hop. And let me give you some history to prove it. How many people like hip-hop in this room? Just make noise. No, make some noise. How many like hip-hop? How many do not? How many do not? Just make noise. Okay, so out of all the people in the room, only maybe 40% even responded at all. But just a little history. Black music in America, because this is what we're talking about. This is African-American music, and it really is African music. This music that developed into jazz, hip-hop, R&B, gospel, Negro spirituals, skinhead music, all of this, if they want to really give the props to it, historically it belongs to the African who brought it to America, and it developed there through certain means and reasons. And the word itself, like jazz, it was coined in Louisiana, in New Orleans. Okay, and just to give you a little history, and there's several aspects and renditions of this story, but this is the one that I most believe, and it's been well researched. All forms of black music in America, as they developed, were demeaned, they were considered by the white community being low-class music. I don't care. So the hip-hop music of the late 18th century and early 19th and early, not 18th century, 19th and 20th century was jazz, and it was looked upon exactly like hip hop is today. Okay, now what is jazz? It represents the only cultural contribution that America ever really made to art and to music. Really, the only original thing that they had, other than the Native Americans' contribution, and they were there before the Europeans. So, But anyway, I'll stick to the point. Jazz, it was originally spelled J-A-S-S, not J-A-Z-Z. Okay, why? Okay, if you know anything about African languages, an African can take a sentence and say it in one word. Okay, and this is something that Black Americans, this was an African carryover. We have a lot of things that are distinctly African in our music. One is antiphony. Okay, this is not European, call and response. It's not a part of Gregorian chants. It's a part of African music. If you have a background vocalist, a group of people singing background, and a person singing lead, that's African. Okay, the pentatonic scale, these blues notes, and syncopation, what people call syncopation. Hip hop is the epitome of syncopation. Okay, there's certain aspects of it that you can look at the advent of the synthesizer and the sampler is what gave birth to the hip hop community. It was a technological, I don't call it an advance necessarily, but it's something that, the more or less the white community comes up with. They had these technological things they come out with, and people grab it and make different things out of it. And what happened is they had this sample machine that could take some music and you just sample. Maybe it had the capabilities in the beginning of sampling 10 seconds of music, maybe 2 minutes in total. And then it had the capability of taking those samples and putting them in a sequence form in that machine. So this gave some young guys in the ghetto said, well, they took the machine and they put a little James Brown going, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it. And then they had something else going, they find a record that just have a little spot where there wasn't anything else on it but drums. And they just take that and they loop it. They make a loop from it. And that's what gave birth to this kind of music, is that some young kids were able to take someone else's music and make something new out of it. But if they were stealing, because in the beginning they weren't paying for it. But let's get back to jazz, the J-A-S-S. White people in America call this black music, the development, this jazz, jackass music. And the people that played it, they consider jackasses. Okay, this is very known amongst the world that black people in different countries are looked down upon. Sort of like Turkish people are here. They're second-class citizens in a certain way. So people who have power, for some reason, look down on other people because they got power. That lacking common sense and some compassion, but this is what happens. You know what I'm saying? It seems that in different cultures, there's always someone to be picked on. Unfortunately, but that's the truth. So here's what happened. Jackass music. Black people started, okay, it's jackass, okay, cool, jackass. Jazz. It turned into jazz from jackass. Okay, some promoter probably, some politician or somebody just decided, well, let me put a twist on it and made it J-A-Z-Z. I don't know how that part happened, but that's how the word came about. Okay, now let's go into the hip hop part of it. But if you look past jazz, let's look a little past jazz. Let's look into the swing area. Even before Buddy Bolden, Jelly Roll Morton, Louis Armstrong, these Kid Ory, Kid Oliver, Kid whatever, out of Louisiana, these brass bands, white musicians began to really appreciate this music, and they began to imitate it. Blacks weren't allowed in the cabarets and the hotels and the places that white musicians were. So even it got to as ridiculous as white people painting their faces black, and so that they could play this music for white people, because black people couldn't go in there. But that's how ridiculous it was. So this has happened throughout the history of black music in America. If you take a step further, like in the swing area, who was the king of swing? It wasn't Duke Ellington or Count Basie. Who was it? Stephen, who was it? Woody Herman?
Benny Goodman.
Who was it? No, he wasn't the king of swing. It was Benny Goodman. Benny Goodman was the king of swing. This was a white guy. He learned this music. This was black music. Okay, if you look at who was the king of rock and roll when Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley was walking the streets? Elvis Presley. Okay, this is something that's happened just recently we had Eminem. Vanilla Ice. I worked with this guy. I mean, this is rap music, and it's people are emulating it because they appreciate it. You know, if you go back a little further, there was a place in New Orleans called Congo Square or Place Congo. Then it was a place they called Back of Town, and it was a place where the slaves were allowed to have some relaxation and some freedom on Sundays. So let's have, I won't say the N word, but let's have all the N's go to the square and party and relieve some tension so they won't be so mad at us that they want to riot and, you know, whatever. So they gave them some freedom, and they put them in the square, and they would come in. The Africans would be there because the slaves were Africans. They were Wolof, they were Mandinks, there was Fulanis, there were Hausas, there were Yorubas, there were Bantus. You know what I'm saying? It was Congo Square, Place Congo. That gives you some idea of how many Congolese were there. Okay, so these people would go there, and guess what they would do? They would play their traditional music. Toussaint Louverture overturned Haiti. Some black people with no shoes on, and machetes, and whatever, butter knives, spoons, threw the French off the island. We're talking about Napoleon Bonaparte here, okay? So that sent shockwaves through the slaveholding nations of America, that these black people, well, if they could do it there, well, we better. In fact, they went out and slaughtered thousands of black people just to give them the message, look, don't even try this, okay? So what happened with Congo Square, they said, no more of this African drumming. You can't do this. Well, what they would let black people, black men or women play, but especially black men, you could play drum and bugle corps stuff. That's why there's so many wonderful trumpet players, brass players coming out of New Orleans, because they were allowed to play these brass instruments, and that's where the second line music is. You have groups that are coming out of there like Rebirth, the Soul Rebels. They play the special kind of music they call the second line, okay? And this is the music that was created, and people like Louis Armstrong and these people helped develop this style of music. So, you know, it's very important to understand how all of this developed. Out of Congo Square, these people were allowed to play in the army, you know, like drum and bugle stuff. So they took those African rhythms and they put those rhythms into that music. And eventually it turned into our modern day jazz. And that's the truth. That's how it happened. Okay, there it is. Now, did I answer? I don't know if I answered
No,
everything.
so it sounds like from that foundation, you probably would agree that hip-hop in that sense can serve as a bridge.
Well, let me say this now.
between
Hip-hop
peoples.
has a bad name because it's not the music, it's the text. In America, there's some...
But now you're preempting my question. Okay.
Well, I won't do that, but he said, but see, the thing about hip-hop is it's not so much the music part of it that's controversial, it's what's being said.
That was my question. The second
Okay.
question is music as cultural diplomacy. You have traveled the world, and I believe that you consider yourself a cultural diplomat. Is that correct?
I could consider myself a friend.
Okay, and a friend.
Is that better? I better be a friend than a diplomat.
Okay. So
That is diplomacy.
Okay.
Okay.
So in terms of a friend and a cultural diplomat, the lyrics of hip-hop music, do you believe that they are responsible for the degeneration of the young generation in America or the young generation all over the world today?
Oh, you ever watch cartoons?
Yes, as a child.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, everybody's watched cartoons, right? Okay, you ever seen the Road Runner?
Yes.
Okay, the Road Runner, beep beep, meep meep, and here comes the coyote, right? What happens to him? He's looking up and an anvil hits him in the head. Do you take it seriously? Do you really take that seriously? It's violence at its highest height. If you look at the cartoons, there's more violence and destructive stuff coming out of there that I've seen. I mean, there are bombs, people are being blown up, blown apart. The kids are watching this. The guys getting their head cut off. The coyotes getting smashed into the ground. You know, Donald Duck is losing his big beak or whatever. There's a lot of violence in it. But do you take it seriously? No, it's make-believe. So this is what I do believe. My brother can tell you this. When we were kids, my mother, she didn't want us to listen to certain kind of music. It was R&B music. There were certain lyrics in it. There was one in particular. It said, eggs ain't poultry, grits ain't groceries. and Mona Lisa was a man. And she didn't like that because, well, what does that mean? Now we're getting into, sexual orientation and stuff like that. So she objected to it. And I think every generation, for instance, with Elvis Presley, white people in America protested this music. They protested this music like seriously. And they said it was devil music. But we take this seriously? Okay, now I think, this is what I think with hip hop and the lyrics. They're saying things that are really sort of like, I look at like the cartoons. They don't mean any harm, but maybe they're doing harm. They don't mean it. You know what I'm saying? I object to the bitch, the hoe, and demeaning of women. That's my objection. If it's not positive, then it's destructive. You're either part of the problem, as Elvis Cleaver said in Soul on Ice, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Okay, so that's how I look at stuff. Can you stop this? No. Do you want to stop it? Do you want to censor it? Like the N-word. Do you want to censor it? I wouldn't censor it. It's a reality. It happened. People called us that word. Why do I want to stop you from using it? We need to address why and not the word. I've never met a bad word. I've met a lot of bad people, but I have never met a bad word. Okay? I'd rather F than fight. Which is the bad word? K-I-L-L or F-U-C-K?
I hear you.
Okay, I'm just being honest with you. I'm just being honest with you. You asked me the question, I'm gonna give you an honest answer.
I appreciate
I have objection to people. There are certain issues that are going on. What's more important? It's honesty and truth, and without that, we can't change anything. So, I mean, if some young people from America start, why are they saying things, or you look at a video and you see the women in it, and they're turned around, their buttocks are sticking up in the air, and it's demeaning. It's definitely not positive. So what has to happen is there's something that went wrong in their education, in their development in terms of, how to respect. My father always said, never do to a woman what you wouldn't want to see done to your sister or your daughter or your mother. That's pretty simple to understand. I grasp that really easily. I got a daughter. I have a granddaughter. I don't want to see my daughter in Playboy magazine. I really don't. I don't want to see her in Hustler, and I don't want to see her ass twirling around on some hip hop video. That's my answer.
I totally agree with you. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Summers. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I hope I'm not being too graphic.
I'm originally from Ireland, but I've lived in Berlin for the past 4 years. Both places are found quite strong views on Americans. It's either sort of love them or hate them. And just for you thinking, the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, unemployment, financial crisis, as well as the US foreign policy in the Mediterranean, North Africa, Afghanistan and such like that, looks as though there's been a major downgrade in the pride of being an American. What do you think? Like, would you say you're proud to be an American? And so do you think
I'm
as
not
well?
an American, baby. No, I'm not proud. Listen, when I can get really emotional about this question here, so I'm gonna try to just calm down. Yeah, I really do. I have to because it could make you cry to think about. My ordeal is some of the things that I think about. Am I proud to be? I'm not an American. I'm an African. I'm an African born in America. I have Native American blood, and I got some white blood too. My great grandfather was named William Kenner. He was from England, and he was one of the first white men in New Orleans to ship goods on the Mississippi River on a steamboat. He and his family, his sons, had one of the biggest plantations in Louisiana. My great-great-grandmother gave birth to 7 kids to a slave master. I know every one of their names, and I know who he is, where he lived, and his history, and in fact, the entire history of this. And she gave, just to give you a short, and I'll answer the question, give you a short, this capsulization as a story account tells a lot about how I feel about America. This woman had 7 children by this man, and he decided to marry a white woman who had power and money. And so what did he have to do? He had to get rid of his black family in order to marry her. And he actually sold his portion of the plantation. He and his brother ran the plantation. My uncle, my great uncle, Duncan Kenner. And they both had this plantation called the Belle Helene Plantation in Louisiana. And so he sold my great-great-grandmother and her kids to his brother. Oh yeah, this is a hell of a story here. To his brother. Now, she was not a dumb woman. She had stashed enough money away to buy herself out of slavery. So she had actually paid her brother-in-law for her freedom. She had enough money to actually buy a few of the kids. But she would come back periodically as she made money. She moved to St. Louis. She became a successful businesswoman washing clothes. She made enough money washing clothes to actually buy an apartment building. And she rented rooms to young black men, you know, that were aspiring to go whatever, up the ladder or whatever. And so she would come back to Louisiana and buy her children back. And so at the last child to buy back was one called Bill. I'm named after him. My father was named after him. William Kenner was the original. But anyway, to make a long story short, she came back to buy him, and this is why I don't call myself an American. She went to buy him, and Duncan said, well, he's become very valuable to me. He's a trainer. He trained horses, and he was a jockey. And so they made a deal, and this was the deal. She gave him, I think it was $2,000, somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500. Back then, that's a lot of money. And he said, look, here's what we'll do. Here's the deal. You give me the $2,500, and but I need $3,400 for Bill. And so was a deal. Look, he stays on the plantation with me for another 3 years at $15 a month, and he's free. That makes up the balance. So she said, okay, the deal was done. But before the 3 years was up, she died. Duncan got on the train or whatever, the boat, and went to St. Louis and claimed her estate and brought all the kids back into slavery. Okay. Well, yes, this is a story. This is America. This is South Africa and a lot of other places. So what happened was shortly after she got back, one of the kids, his name was Alexander Kenner, and if you want to look this up, it's on the internet. It was an interview done by a journalist, and it's on the internet. And Alexander Kenner told us this story that I'm telling you. But at any rate, he became an adult. And believe it or not, slaves had rights in Louisiana, and one of them was to sue. He sued his uncle. He won. He won the estate back. He went to Bill. He said, Bill, you're free. And Bill said, I can't go anywhere. Why? He had 16 kids, and my grandmother was one of them. Okay, so now, in America, when my brother and I would visit Louisiana, they had signs up, no Negroes allowed. They had bathrooms that we couldn't go into. You know what I'm saying? I watched my mother urinate on the sidewalk because someone would let her use the bathroom. Fuck America, okay? Okay, that's how I feel. I am on the planet Earth. All of it is mine. There's not one. I'm in Germany. Germany is a room in my house. My house. Jamaica is a room in my house. Haiti, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, it's mine. It's ours. You can look up in the sky, all that's ours. So how are you going to divide this little thing up into pieces? There are no longitude, latitudes. It is not Greenwich time. It's right now everywhere. We've been subjugated to all kinds of BS and, you know, to milk more time out. We got daylight savings time. What is it for? Why do we have second hands on the clock? I don't even wear a watch. It's right now. In America, it's right now. It's not, in Australia, it's 12 hours ahead. It's another day. You know, so there's all kinds of games being played. But, you know, I don't mean to disrespect America, because in every way that you can imagine, I'm a good American. I'm a good American, but I'm not that American. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's a difference. I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
totally.
Am I being too graphic?
No, no.
Huh?
No, it's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the election's coming up the next month. With 4 years ago being the first African American president in the United States, what do you think the outcome is going to be this
Say that
election?
again?
Oh, sorry. So what do you think the outcome of this election is going to be with Romney and Obama? It seems pretty close as of now, but it's kind of a yeah.
I mean, you know the Titanic? Mm-hmm. Everybody know the Titanic? Okay, so here you get, I mean, I never thought I'd see a black president in my lifetime. And I'm quite sure there was a lot of white folks that didn't think they would see it either. And I don't know if you guys, there's a movie you need to see. It's called Putney Swope. It's a very old black exploitation film. And and I'm gonna tell you what happened. And it could happen again. This guy, he was the only black person on this board of directors for this big corporation. He was a token black guy. They had to give him a job because things were changing in America. And so every other company said, well, let's get a couple of black guys and we'll look like we're part of the new guard, and we'll get brownie points for it. So this black guy was on the board of directors. So they're having a new director being elected. So all of the white guys casted a vote. They said, well, I should vote for the black guy because I know no one else will. So they all wound up voting for him, and he became director of the chairman of the board. He fired all of them and hired his friends. So look, here's the thing about America in this situation with Barack Obama. I mean, this is how I felt about it when it happened. I was very happy to see it happen. I thought it was one of the most, it was like South Africa and Mandela. I mean, come on, I was in Germany, I was in Heidelberg. I was partying on the streets with people from Germany. Let me tell you, we broke bottles of champagne open in Heidelberg at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when we got the news. And there were people, Germans, that were next door to me that opened their doors and came out in the street and was jumping and partying all in the street. Everybody was happy about this. This wasn't just something for black people to be happy about. It was like, this is a sign that things can be different. It was more than him being president. Him being president ain't important. What happened is a sign that things can change for anybody at any time if you believe in yourself. That's what was the big deal about it. So now him being president, here's the reality of it. Bush had messed it up so bad, no one could fix it. He had destroyed the place. He had inherited the Titanic. The ship was sinking. Now here comes Obama. He plugged up so many holes in it, it's still sinking, but it ain't sinking as fast. And they have an opportunity to save the ship. Okay, now how long do you need to save the ship? I think maybe 8 years won't be enough. And if Romney comes in, so be it, because I don't care, really, because you can't be a Republican and a Democrat and be fair, because they don't like each other. They fight each other. It's just like any other kind of politics. There's two parties. You choose your one. I'm not choosing none of them. I think Barack Obama was a good president. I'm not a political person, but I think what I saw coming out of his mouth and the things he tried to do, it sounded like he felt like a noble man. My reading, spiritually, is he's a good guy. His greatest asset, Michelle. Okay, Michelle is the president. El Presidente is, I tip my hat to her because she was able to bring her man to the presidency, and they got 2 beautiful kids, and he's a man of honor, and if he doesn't win, he's already won.
So
That's my
thank you.
answer.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bill Summers, as we raise our glasses to you, and thank you for the interview, I think you know what you can do with the empty bottle.
I can't.
Thank
That's
you.
what y'all wouldn't let me. See, they wouldn't let me. Huh?
Later.
You're going to prepare it. That's
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
it's
for later.
very big. But that's okay. I'm going to play this later.
Yes, thank
Oh,
you.
I see.
You asked
Okay.
me for a bottle yesterday, and here it is.
I got it. Okay, this is a special bottle. and you'll see it later.
Okay.
You're right.
So thank you very much,
Is
Mr. Bilson.
are there questions or something? Did you say that?